The cultural heart of the Makah tribe has always been the whale. The significance that the gray whale holds in Makah art and tradition is both profound and long-lasting. It follows through in even their tribal symbol, which depicts a thunderbird grasping a whale in its talons. For more than 2,000 years, this resource of meat, oil, and blubber has been a vital aspect of Makah culture. For centuries, the tribe prospered along the Strait of Juan de Fuca and the Washington coast, within 5 villages consisting of roughly 4,000 individuals. Tradition began to crumble, however, when the arrival of Europeans in the late 1700s left much of the tribe to suffer from a transferred epidemic of smallpox, influenza, and other foreign illnesses. Fatalities plummeted the Makah populace. Generations of ancient tradition were at risk as the heavy loss loomed over the coast. In 1855, the Treaty of Nia Bay was signed, a mutual act of diplomacy that had a profound impact on the Makah tribe as a community. It allowed the Makah living around Juan de Fuca and Cape Flattery to keep their marine waters and their right to whale. In doing so, however, the tribe had to give up 90%, nearly 300,000 acres of their land in exchange. The covenant had devastating effects on the tribe, despite being a profound diplomatic foundation that affirmed the tribe's whaling rights in the coming decades. Around this time, and again in the early 20th century, non-native commercial whaling operations were pushing the gray whale population to the brink of extinction. By the 1920s, the Makahs voluntarily suspended their historical whale hunt, acknowledging the vulnerable situation that the species was in. They had plans to resume whaling when the gray whale population had rebounded, which turned out to be 70 years later. By the 1990s, the eastern North Pacific gray whale population had greatly recuperated. All commercial whaling in America was outlawed in 1970, which, combined with effort from activists, led to a remarkable recovery of the species. As a result of this success, gray whales in the eastern Pacific were removed from the list of endangered species in 1994. It was not too long after, in the fall of 1998, when the tribe came to the agreement that it was the appropriate time to resume the hunt, given federal approval. The Makah tribe's decision sparked nationwide debate and controversy, drawing the media and many animal rights groups into the issue on both sides. One prominent group at the forefront of the opposing side was the Sea Shepherd Conservation Society, a marine activist organization that went through great lengths to prevent the Makah from following through with a successful hunt. Sea Shepherd believed that whales should not be killed under any circumstance, despite the fact that whaling had been a cultural foundation for the tribe since time immemorial. The Makah had gone 70 years and lived without killing a single whale, so the death of one at this point seemed unjustifiable in the eyes of Sea Shepherd. Other activists argued that allowing the Makah to hunt whales would prompt and encourage the reinstallation of large-scale commercial whaling. This is what made the tribe's decision a worry to many, as commercial whaling is what led to the near extinction of gray whales in the first place.
Often our opponents will use science or portions of the science that's out there to try to influence the government as a reason to say no to what we're doing. And we go through those. We go through those forums. We present our scientific evidence. We're not people that are anti-science at all.
For 8 months following the federal Makah whaling authorization in 1998, Makah whalers practiced and trained for the hunt by cedar canoe, encountering persistent protesters on the reservation land, as well as many local news reporters. The first attempted hunt since roughly 1928 was conducted on May 10, 1999, just south of Cape Flattery. A swarm of protesters, including those from Sea Shepherd Conservation Society, disrupted the canoe whaling on the water, blocking any hopes of a successful hunt for the tribe. Coast Guard boats loosely followed the Makah canoe to prevent any protesting boats from exceeding the legal 500-meter radius. Another hunt was attempted 5 days afterwards on May 15th, but it had the same unsuccessful outcome.
The kill was quick, but still brutal. 3 blasts from a .50 caliber rifle and several harpoon strikes taking this massive giant of the sea down in less than 15 minutes.
It was in the early morning of May 17, 1999, when the macaw achieved their first triumphant hunt in more than 70 years. 2 harpoons thrown from the whaling canoe were thrust into the whale to prevent it from diving. Following this, a .50 caliber assault rifle delivered a fatal blow to the juvenile gray whale from a nearby support boat. The tribe's decision to make a modernized alteration was to assure a more humane death for the whale's sake, to prevent suffering. However, the decision was met with extreme anger from protesters, many of whom argued that the validity of the macaw's whaling rights went away when they strayed from tradition. Shortly after the whale had been killed, a boat from the Sea Shepherd Conservation Society arrived on the scene, honking its horn in protest of the event. Groups of whale watchers on boats traveled to the reservation after the whale had been towed to land, many of them yelling in objection.
The whole world's disgusted in what you've done.
This isn't disgusting.
You must be
This isn't disgusting what you're doing here.
so proud. Look what you've done. Look what you've done.
Despite this, crowds of tribal members rejoiced from the water's edge. Whaling had always been central to Makah culture, so the positive impact that this sort of cultural rebirth had on the tribe was of great significance. Following tradition, tribal ceremonies commenced and centuries-old songs were sung. The whale was carved on the beach in preparation for a multi-tribal potlatch feast to celebrate the victory, which would take place the following weekend. Fresh blubber was passed to many members of the tribe. Undeterred by the groups of protesters that had gathered along the reservation, the macaw celebrated with the joy of knowing that the significance of the hunt would provide lasting help for the tribe.
It was, gollies, it's really hard to put into words the feelings, actual feelings, having been there and been present at that time. But to know that, in our lifetime it's no longer just stories told by our elders. It's something that's real and attainable.
Later, on the same day as the killing, a candlelight vigil took place at the Seattle Federal Building with many protesters holding signs. The event was organized as a low-key memorial for the whale that the macaw killed, but it quickly regressed into a series of violent messages against the tribe. Racist remarks were written on several roadside protesters' signs, such as "Save a whale, harpoon a macaw," and other variations of the same phrase. Death threats were sent to the tribe by anonymous phone calls. Religious leaders in Seattle urged for tolerance as the issue began to spiral. Those who oppose Makah whaling rights prioritize biodiversity and animal rights over the cultural history of the tribe. Opposition has often been racially motivated, driven by the myth that indigenous tradition is fated to be assimilated into modernity for the sake of a growing society. There was immense pressure on the federal government from animal rights groups at this time to seize the macaw's right to whale. There was a lot of fear-mongering about what the hunt meant for the possible future of commercial whaling and gray whale species. As a response to this, in June of 2000, the federal government issued an environmental assessment of the hunt, which was approved in 2001.
Can be a complicated diplomatic process because we are operating at not just a national level with the federal government, but an international level that involves a number of countries.
Unfortunately, pressure on the federal government led to a ruling by the U.S. Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals deciding that more environmental reviews of macaw hunts should be followed through with. The tribe's right to whale has been in limbo ever since. The attempted sustainability of such controversial tradition has held the tribe in a continuous legal battle. Debate surrounding the ethics of the macaw's whaling rights still persists today. The tribe has yet to be allowed a follow-up to their successful hunt in 1999.
We're not going out there to take a life. We're going out there asking for the life of that whale to be presented to us.
Aubrey, I have to congratulate you for taking on a subject that generates a tremendous amount of passion on both sides. Why did you choose it?
Honestly, it was really hard for me to decide, like from the get-go, to really go for that topic because personally, it was like I'm a really politically driven person, and with something that was so charged, like from both sides of the issue, with a lot of controversy, it was hard for me to decide to stick with that. And um, when it came down to it, I'm really glad that I decided to do this topic.
So this was just one of several topics that you were, kind of thinking about doing?
Honestly, it was one of the first ones. I knew that I was going to do something that was close to me personally and regionally also, like in Washington State. But I just thought it would be a great choice. My grandpa is actually the executive director of the Lower Columbia Fish Recovery Board. And so he has a lot of connections with Native tribes as far as um, diplomacy about fishing rights. And so I knew that was something that I had some background in, knew about, and it was definitely something that I went to first.
So did you have much trouble finding information about this dispute?
Oh, I think that was one of my greatest issues throughout the whole project was finding coverage about it, finding information, any sort of documents, articles. I found one news station, which was King 5, that actually covered the event, the historical 1999 whaling hunt. Um, they were the only ones that had any coverage of the event, and there honestly wasn't a lot of attention that had been brought to it. So I thought this would just be a great opportunity for me to amplify this issue and bring some attention to the tribe because there wasn't a lot out there for me to go off of.
So I'm curious how you even found out about this dispute between the tribe and the environmentalist in the first place.
Well, my grandpa has worked with a few Makah tribe members, and so he had worked with them and learned about that because it really is something so central to their culture. So he'd heard that brought up a few times, and my mom as well had heard about it. So,
Well, I think you did an excellent job of trying to balance the macabre perspective with the anti-whaling folks. And I mean, as well as I do, the whaling industry is not a popular industry, and your documentary brings out what great pains they would go to look at a whale hunt as a cultural activity as opposed to commercial whaling. Was that something that you were trying to keep in mind as you were making your documentary?
it definitely was, and I definitely think that from beginning my project, I had a completely different perspective on the issue than when I had finished it and after I had my interview with Chairman Green. It changed a whole lot of it for me, as far as how I stood on the issue and being able to decipher the difference between that cultural hunt and the commercial whaling, which is a really corrupt industry.
I thought your interview with Chairman Green was really good and a vital part of the documentary to be able to give their perspective. Is he somebody that you were able to contact through your grandfather?
Honestly, I was like so excited when I found out that I was able to contact him. I mean, being a really influential head of the tribe, I mean, honestly, um, my grandpa had been talking with one of his colleagues, Jonathan Scordino, who is a marine mammal biologist, and he was just super psyched about me doing that project. And he had connections with the tribal council, and he said, "Hey, if you're looking for someone to interview for this, like I could hook you up with the chairman." And I was like, "Oh my gosh!" I honestly was not expecting that was something that I'd be able to do at all. I thought that I would be interviewing with him with expertise as a marine mammal biologist, but getting an email from Chairman Green was like probably the most exciting thing about my project, including going to state. I leapt out of bed and then I skipped school that day so that I could interview him for that one day he was available.
Your credits list a lot of sources for images. So I'm curious. You said that it was the television station in Seattle that had the footage from the 1999 hunt. I thought you did an excellent job of excerpting that, but you had a lot of image sources. So how did you, organize all of that for the doc?
Yeah, thank you. As far as like current images go, as far as like present day images of tribal land, whales, and that sort of thing, it was a lot more difficult. But I did find several photographers that had done extensive projects in the early to mid 1900s where I was able to use their work in my project. So that was definitely a resource. Archives and stuff from Washington State University that I was able to make use of.
You have several moments of text in your documentary. Can you talk about the creative decision making that went into that?
If I'm being completely honest, there was actually a technical issue that went on before I decided that to do that, where I had a palette expander and I wasn't able to speak as fluently at that point in time, and it was really frustrating in the beginning. But then I realized that providing that really impactful, powerful statement and multiple text parts would add a lot to my documentary, and it ended up being a positive thing that I'm really glad I got to include.
Your documentary is sympathetic to the Makah perspective. Was that something that emerged during the process of making the documentary, or did your mindset change as you were making it?
Well, from the beginning of my project, I'd always intended to highlight the tribal perspective, as it was something that I was really passionate about. But through the process, I was able to definitely gain even more sympathy to the fact that killing a whale for financial gain and as a large-scale industry is a lot different than a significant central activity that has been important to a native tribe for centuries, honestly. And so getting that perspective from all of the extensive research that I went through really changed my outlook on animal activism as a whole, and how cultures intertwined in animal activism is something that is completely separate from industry, fishing, hunting, and things of that matter.
Well, Aubrey, you are to be commended for choosing such a difficult topic in which passions run high on both sides. But at the end of it, was this a fun project to work on?
Oh, absolutely. It was totally worth it. And it was a very fun experience for me.
Well, thank you so much. It was really, really terrific film, and congratulations on your award.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.